This presentation centers around women as international political figures. More specifically, it works towards present key international female politicians and how they have made a name for themselves in the patriarchal setting of the political arena. Through statistics, examples of female politicians, and their different accomplishments, we will be able to understand how women have forced themselves into this male-dominated world of power. Women in international politics will be evaluated through the lens of Helen Six's theory, the lap of Medusa. In her essay, Six says the future must no longer be determined by the past. The women in international politics are changing the future of their respective nations in the world by writing themselves into the patriarchal discourse of politics. A woman speaking in a male-dominated realm like politics will shatter her entry into history, which has always been based on her suppression, according to Sixes. Women in politics follow Six's statement: her language does not contain, it carries. It does not hold back, it makes possible. And this is obvious through her political careers that will be examined in how they establish a name for themselves and change the world through their politics and sheer strength of will. In 2000, 13.1% of women were in parliaments throughout the world. In 2015, the number has increased to almost 22%. Even though this number looks like a big increase, it will take 47 more years for parliaments worldwide to reach gender parity at this pace. Pacific countries have 15.3% of women in parliaments, while Nordic countries still only have 41.6%. In the media, female politicians are often displayed as sexual objects or held to higher moral standards than males and have much more media coverage centered around their image. Female politicians receive fewer private donations on average than males, and they are forced to rely heavily on party sponsorship and support. Women have been concerned about the concept of the women's place and whether or not they will be taken seriously in the political realm. As the United States Secretary of State, Clinton urged the ratification of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty in 2010 and finalized it with the Russian Minister Lavrov in 2011. This treaty is intended to limit the United States and Russia to 1,500 warheads and 800 bombers and missiles. This limits the nuclear arsenal of both countries and therefore lessens the threat of nuclear war that was so apparent during the Cold War crisis. Clinton also called for the raid on Osama bin Laden during her time of being Secretary of State to the Obama administration. Defense Secretary Bill Gates and Vice President Joe Biden opposed her call to action for fear of political backlash if the raid failed. Clinton continued her agenda, leading to the capture and execution of Osama bin Laden, the founder of Al-Qaeda. During her election run, Clinton was faced with gender biases that stem around her likability. She had to be strong and highly qualified like every male runner, but also connect with the common people. These qualities meant living up to her higher standards of ethical behavior than the male candidates of the election. A woman must be likable in order to win votes, while the male candidates do not have to rely on likability in order to win an election. While Hillary Clinton did not win this past year's election, she has proved that a woman in politics can impact the nationally and internationally through policy implementations and perseverance. Clinton is writing her way into the patriarchy of politics and forging a new path for women leaders through her strength of will and her refusal to be silenced by her male companions. Abuela was nominated and eventually elected to the position of managing director for the World Bank, which was traditionally held by an American. She was quoted saying that the balance of power in the world has shifted, and she has argued that developing countries need to be given a voice in running things. She has taken a discourse of the white American male and changed it to become a discourse for a minority woman in a position of power. During her time as the World Bank Managing Director, Abuela led several initiatives to assist low-income countries during both food and financial crises. Her entire career was centered around giving a voice to the poorer countries and improving their living conditions through her policies that were implemented. Abuela is part of the board of the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations. This program has been adopted in over 57 different countries worldwide. Her work has allowed poorer countries to reduce mass death due to disease with immunizations created to counter them and improve the overall well-being of the country. Abuela served twice as Nigeria's Minister of Finance. During her first term, she was able to negotiate with the Paris Club of Creditors and diminish $30 billion of Nigeria's debt. Abuela was the first woman to hold this position, creating a pathway for other women to make economic and political difference in their country and around the world. As the Chancellor of Germany, she aimed to strengthen transatlantic economic relations. This resulted in her signing the Agreement for the Transatlantic Economic Council in 2007. This agreement aims at removing barriers to trade and further integrated transatlantic free trade. The economic cooperation between the U.S. and Germany helps to promote economic growth through increased trade and job creations. Merkel is often referred to as the de facto leader of the European Union. The European Union was created after the Second World War and has now resulted in more than half a century of peace, stability, and progress in Europe. This organization has expanded from an economic union into one that spans into policy areas like climate, environment, and health to external relations and security, justice, and migration. Merkel was awarded the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest award given to a civilian by Obama in 2011. President Obama described Merkel as an eloquent voice for human rights and values worldwide. Germany has become one of America's biggest allies due to Merkel's and Obama's efforts to establish a political union. In elections in Germany, she narrowly defeated her opponent Gerhard Schroeder, who refused to concede power. The Christian Democratic Union, in which she was the leader previously, formed a coalition with the Social Democratic Party and declared Merkel the Chancellor of Germany. She was the first female to assume this type of position. Women in politics have made large steps in policy changes, representation, and leadership. The question then begged, what is the next step for women in political positions? How can we ensure that women continue to make large steps in progress within the political spectrum and change the world through feminist-based policies and working towards ending the oppression of women internationally? Angela Fry offers an interesting solution to this question. Political women must begin denying their male rivals access to their bodies for the objectification they often face. When this occurs, women will be able to utilize Six's theory of writing the female body into history and changing the world through their feminist-centered ideals and political agendas. Despite the progress women have made in politics, they are still underrepresented in every political arena. While they have taken the task Sixes presented in her writings of writing themselves into political history, much is to be done in order to create a general equal world in politics. Clinton, Iowa, and Merkel have made history with their place in the international political world and have helped to forge a path for future powerful women.